Hello friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. Well, today I'm going to show you how I make a low sugar, pectin free, as in no store-bought pectin, not even homemade pectin, jam. And I'll be using blackberries today, and I'm also doing a little bit of an experiment because each time I try this I go with a little bit less sugar and a little bit less sugar. My goal is eventually to try making some without any sugar altogether added to it, so all I need is the fruit. But I'm going to be going ahead and adding some sugar today. Now this batch I'm going to show you right here, and those of you who follow me on Facebook would have seen the picture I put up about this one. This was the one I made with, I did half as much sugar to fruit. So typically your store-bought pectin tells you to put almost twice the amount of sugar as the amount of fruit that you have, where this is the other way around. For every 1 cup of fruit, I was using a ½ cup of sugar. Well, for this, the one I'm going to try today, I'm going to be doing 2 cups of the berries and a ½ cup of sugar, so that I'm doing only 1/4 of the amount of sugar per fruit. So I'm cutting the sugar by half yet again, and see how well this works out. So you're going to be joining me along with this experiment. Now, one of the keys to getting a good set on your jam without having to use pectin is making sure that when you choose your fruit, such as when we pick the blackberries, and blackberries are one of those fruits that are already naturally high in pectin, but to get even more pectin is throwing in some red berries, so some unripe fruit, and that's going to apply to any fruit that you use. You're going to have your highest pectin in the unripe fruit. Obviously you don't want to use all unripe fruit, or you're not going to get the good flavor of the fruit itself. So we have some really very ripe blackberries in here as well, to the point that they're falling apart. So I try to get a good mix. Now I'm going to hold this up so you can see the ratio of red to black. I have quite a bit of red in there. And also I find that some of the unripe just adds a little bit more to the flavor, so you're getting that tartness in there too. But also, because of that tartness is another reason I'm not sure I should go completely without sugar at this point, or the jam itself might be too tart. Now, I have made homemade pectin in the past, and I just recently, I made it in 2014, and I just opened it up the other day and tried it. And I'm not sure that I could tell a difference in using that or not using that, but I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so here's the jar. I made several jars of this, and what I did was I found some apples, wild apples growing down the road that were just little small, tiny unripe apples, and those are the best kind. Like crab apples make a really good pectin, and basically it's just a matter of cutting them up, putting it in water and cooking it down and then straining it out. And one of these days maybe I'll do a video on how I made this, but right after I made this I found out about the old-fashioned version, where they didn't typically add pectin to their jams. They just cook it down, and that's basically all it is. Now I personally find this method easier than using store-bought, because you don't have to follow the directions precisely by the book or by the recipe and have everything measured out perfect. You can just pretty much throw this together, and as long as you cook it to a certain temperature or to a certain feel, which I'll show you in a bit, you should get a pretty good set. So again, making sure you get some unripe fruit in there really helps. Now, if you're working with certain fruits that have a low pectin content, you may consider adding stuff like citrus peels, lemon, orange, lime, because those are also going to be high in pectin. Or if you're mixing, like apple butters are really great. One of my favorite apple butters is apple blueberry lemon, and so I'm getting both the benefits of the apple and the lemon with the peel to really get a good set, and no need for a bunch of sugar or added pectin. So it's the same principle. So anyway, let me go ahead and measure out 2 cups of my berries, and I'm just going to mash them in there to get a good even cup. Now, for me, a lot, from what I understand, and I learned this just recently from Jen, because different fruits have their pectin higher in different places. Like in citrus, it's mostly in the peels. But apparently, like with blackberries, it's mostly in the seeds. I didn't realize that till she said that. I just knew that the more unripe the fruit was, the higher the pectin was in it. So really, as long as you got your seeds in there and you're cooking it in with the seeds, you should be getting a good set anyway. I'm just going to go ahead and mash these berries up. I like to have, you know, some kind of whole fruit in here. I like my jams pretty chunky. So how you choose to do this is up to you. You may even want to put it in a food processor or blender to really blend it down small. And I like seeds. I like real jam. I like the whole fruit in there. Because seeds have so much health benefits in them alone, I would hate to leave them out. And I just like them. I'm just funny that way, I guess. But I'm just going to mash this down a little bit, not too much. I'm going to be using organic evaporated cane sugar. So this is a good blonde colored sugar. Of the healthier sugars, this would be the least healthy, but it's way better than going with just a plain white sugar that's not even labeled as cane sugar, because if you do that, then what you're getting is genetically modified sugar beets, and that is the worst one to go with. So if you can get a good organic cane sugar like this, we get ours at Costco. It's probably hard to tell the color in this green jar, but it is kind of a nice blonde color. I'll pour it in here. This cup equals about this lid equals about 1/4 cup. I don't know if that helps if you've never used the organic cane sugar. Now the reason I do this, you can do this with honey. I've never actually tried it, but I know it would work. The reason I personally would not use honey is because we don't keep bees, so I don't get free honey, and it's very expensive to buy out here. And whereas I can get organic cane sugar, and it's much cheaper. And since this has to be cooked at a fairly high heat and for a long period of time, I wouldn't want to waste all the good nutrients in the raw honey I have in a jam, because all those are going to be cooked out once I heat it that high. So I'd rather go with the cane sugar. Now, if we ever get bees and I have honey coming out my ears, then I'd be using honey for this. On this, I'm turning the heat up all the way on this hot plate, because typically your hot plates like this, the wattage on them isn't as high as your conventional stovetop. So on this one, I do have to turn it up on high, and the other one isn't even as high a wattage as this, so I don't do very good with the jam on that one. And I tried doing it on the rocket stove, and I had a hard time keeping the temperature consistent. And these things are all very important when you're making your jam. So right now I'm just stirring in the sugar, getting it dissolved, and then I'm just going to let this come up, let this get hot. And basically you're wanting to try to get this to a rolling boil, but there's a lot more to it than that, and I will get to that in a minute. There's several different ways where you can tell when your jam is ready. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just let this go ahead and get good and hot and start to boil, and then I'll come back when it's to that point and then show you what I do next. Again, this is very simple. It's more a matter of time. It just takes longer cook time than when using an added pectin, especially store-bought. Oh yes, and before I forget, another reason you want to get away from store-bought pectin is it's typically going to be full of garbage, genetically modified ingredients. It's not what you think it is. So when I found that out, that was when I decided not only do I just want to be more independent of having to have that one more store-bought thing, I need to find a healthier way to do this, just like cutting back on the sugar. So anyway, I'll be back when this starts to boil. All right, so you can see now that I have this pretty much to a rolling boil, which means that it does not stop boiling when you stir it. You can't stir it down. It's going to keep going. Now at this point, you can adjust your heat to maybe medium-high. I find that for this, it's best if I keep it because of what this is, to keep it on high. But if you're doing this on a conventional stove top, you're probably going to want to turn it down to medium or medium high, depending on the wattage of the burner that you're cooking on. Now, if you're doing a much bigger batch than this, it's going to take a much longer time to get this to where you want it. The candy thermometer is going to be your easiest way of being able to tell if you're going to get a good set on your jam, because you can simply go by once it gets to about 220 degrees. Now for me personally, I don't trust that alone. I still like to do other methods, such as checking to see how thick it is when it pours off the spoon, which I can already see it's thickening up quite a bit. Or by using a bowl or a plate and putting just a little dollop in there and sticking it in the refrigerator or the freezer for a minute or two, and then checking it to see if it's set, and then I know it's good. So you got a few different ways of telling. To me, the spoon method isn't the most reliable. They call it sheeting, or when it hangs off in heavy drops as you go to pour it. It's not quite there yet. I want to show you how thick this looks right now. Can you see that? I would say this is probably there, but to be on the safe side, I'm going to go ahead and let it continue cooking up to 225 or 220. And in the meantime, I'm going to take a little bit out, just a little bit like that. And to me, I am positive that is ready. Scratch that last. All right, so I got this out. It was only in there for a minute, and it's good and thick. It's ready. So this didn't even get up to temperature, and it's ready to go. So the thermometer may not even be the best way. In fact, I only started using the thermometer method this year. Before for the past several years that I've been doing it this way, I just went by how it looked and felt, and then doing the little thing there where I stick it in the bowl and in the refrigerator or freezer. So you can see how that just is very thick coming off there. So it is ready, and I've got my jar heated up, and I'm going to start putting the jam in there. I still like to start a little bit small. Now, if I'm doing several jars at a time, what I'll do is put just a little bit in each jar. Let's say I have 4, 5, 6 jars. I'll put a scoop. Normally I'll use a ladle. I don't need a ladle right now since I'm just doing this. In each jar, to make sure that each jar stays hot while I'm filling all the rest of them. Because it seems to me that, if you just totally fill up one jar, then totally fill up the next jar, by the time you get to the last jar, it's cooled off considerably. Now, you can see I'm putting this in a pint-sized jar. So a pint is 2 cups. Now, you know that I used 2 cups of berries and then a 1/4 cup of sugar, and I only got that much. So keep that in mind. Why is that? Because it's cooked down quite a bit. A lot of your liquid cooked out. The pectin and the sugar have now combined to make this nice gel set. I'm going to go ahead and let this cool off a little bit on the counter, and then I'll stick it in the fridge to let it finish setting so I can show you the complete set once this is all done. Here is the one that I just made in front of the camera, and this is the 2 cups of fruit to 1/4 cup of sugar. Okay, well, while I was waiting for that to set, I figured, and I still had all these berries, I figured I might as well go ahead and try the batch to make a batch without any sugar. And so that is this. Absolutely no sugar in this, just nothing but fruit. And it is a little tart. That 1/4 cup of sugar in here really made a difference in flavor, but I tell you, as far as compared to jams with lots and lots of sugar in them, like the following the Pectin box recipe, or even going the 1 part to 1 part, 1 part sugar to 1 part fruit, this has got the best flavor yet, using so much less sugar than anything else, because it's just enough sugar to get that little bit of sweetness to make up for the tart that's in there, but you're still getting that nice flavor of the blackberries and not just sugar like tends to happen with your typical cooked jams. I would consider maybe adding, if you want a little bit more sweetness but you can't have any sugar at all, you know, going with stevia or something like that, a natural form of stevia. But stay away from the fake stuff. Don't do the aspartame or any of that stuff because it's really highly toxic to your body. So try to stick with something natural for sweetening. But anyway, you could make this up just like this and can it, because it's the acidity in the fruit, not the sugar, that makes it shelf stable. Now, I would go ahead and do some double checking on that just to be sure, because I could be wrong, but that's what I found when I looked it up. So anyway, there's a couple of different options. So basically when I did this sugar, this one without any sugar, just nothing but blackberries, I did everything else the same in the way I prepared it, and it, like I said, it set up quicker than this one did with the 1/4 cup of sugar added to it. So there's a couple options for you, and I'm just really excited. It's just been really a fun experiment trying to work with some jams and getting a healthier choice. All right, hope you enjoyed this video and that you learned something new. Thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.